the 9 old men. Mark, on behalf of the entire Disney organization, congratulations. Ward, it's my pleasure to present you with the Disney Legends Award.
The real legends were Roy and Walt, and Dick and I are so flattered that we've been considered for this honor. Thank you.
We have such a dear and special place in our hearts for everything that Disney stands for.
I want to put to rest the rumor that somebody started, that I used to babysit for Walt when he was a little boy.
I remember how very excited I was the first time I walked on the lot, and I was told to report to the wardrobe department, and they fitted me in a little blue pleated skirt and a white t-shirt with my name across it and what we thought were silly mouse ears. Nobody knew what it was supposed to represent. And do you know, here I am, 37 years later, still as excited to be on the lot, because to me it's like coming home.
A pure joy for me to introduce our newest in Disney and my favorite man these days, legend Steve Martin.
Wally Bogue, the first comedian I ever saw live, plied a hilarious trade of gags, offbeat skills such as gun twirling and balloon animals, and generally wowed every audience every time. My attendance at the show became regular thanks to its admission price, free. Wally exuded happiness in his performances. Sorry. And in my early days, I tried to emulate his devil-may-care precision. My fantasy, of course, was that one day Wally would be sick with the flu and a desperate stagehand would come out and ask if there was a 14-year-old boy in the audience who could possibly fill in. Well, that never happened, but it's a great honor for me to be here as a Disney legend. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Anaheim!
I didn't know that I was being honored. I thought Tiana was being honored, and I was here to stand in her place and represent her. I cannot tell you how honored I am to be here and to be a part of this.
I really feel so blessed, and I've always felt that way about having the opportunity to speak the voices for these wonderful characters of Alice and Wendy, and it's reward enough. And then here I'm honored again.
Roy, Walt, Michael, Marty, I will cherish this honor. Thank you so very much.
Today I feel like my family has given me the keys to my very own car. Thank you.
I've been privileged to know and work with almost every single one of the 200 people who have been named Disney Legends in the past. So it's a tremendous honor for me today to be able to join their illustrious group.
Please welcome our very own voice of Goofy, and let's not forget Pluto, Disney legend Bill Farmer. Bill?
It's been a lifetime of great memories, and I hope it goes on forever. Wars, thanks everyone!
A very shy female student came up to me and she says, Mr. Deja, I just don't want to say very much, but I just want to say thank you for drawing my childhood.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to our special presentation celebrating 30 years of the Disney Legends program. Please welcome your host for today, renowned film historian and author, Leonard Maltin.
Hi, everybody. Please sit down. What a nice turnout, and what an appropriate turnout, because, you know, there's such a thing as Hollywood hype. you know, people exaggerate for purpose, ballyhoo and all of that. But I think you would agree, if you're here in this room, these people deserve to be called legends. And it's such a thrill to have them here today. If I had been told when I was a kid, running home from school every day to watch the Mickey Mouse Club, and glued to the TV set every week when Walt Disney hosted his TV show, that I, this kid from New Jersey, would wind up here today with these people, I would have said impossible. But then Disney has a way of making dreams come true. And that's what this is for me, a dream come true. And to get to know some of these folks, they're not only talented, they're nice people, they're good people. And I think it comes through, well, it'll come through in our conversation, and it certainly comes through in their work. I admire them all so much. But before we get to meeting the 7 legends who are here today, I think it's only fitting and proper to talk about not just the history of the legends, which was nicely encapsulated in that video, but the award itself, which is quite beautiful and very striking and has great meaning. And it was designed and sculpted by a man who is here today, Andreas Deja. He is the person who thought and executed a unique form of tribute. I mean, you can give somebody a piece of lucite or a plaque, and you know, it's all well meant and it's all, you know, very nice and lovely. But when you get an award that just by looking at it, you know, has real deep meaning, that's got to be extra special. So let's welcome the sculptor, Andreas Deja. There's a picture, there are pictures of you at work actually, just a couple of years ago. How did this design come about? Now, I know that Roy, the late Roy E. Disney, was instrumental in starting not only the Legends program, but in working with you on this. Tell us a little about that.
Well, it was a bit of a kind of a sleight of hand. Disney had struggled to design this award for quite some time, almost 2 years. And they'd had folks at Animation and at Imagineering, even I think at Consumer Products, working on it. And I was relatively new to Imagineering. I'd only been there a few months, and I was there as a concept designer, not as a sculptor. But Marty Sklar and Randy Bright knew of my background in sculpture, and it was Randy Bright in particular that kind of finagled me into developing an idea for it. And my thought was, well, I'll do that, and then they'll give it to Blaine Gibson and let him finalize. And it would be submitted along with many other submissions. And it scared me because I thought, okay, well, what if they choose it? That's great. Then I have to live with the opinion of the people that I admire so much. And some of those that I worked with, like Herb Ryman and Claude Coates and Ken Anderson, a lot of these legends. Some would invariably like it, but like all things art, probably half of them would not like it, and I wasn't sure if I could live with that kind of rejection. Anyway, I gave this idea over, not thinking that it would ever be picked. And later, the next week, I received a phone call from Barbara Wilcox, who was Roy E. Disney's wonderful assistant. I never talked to Roy Disney or her before. I just got a call, said, Mr. Disney would like to meet you on Thursday. Can you come over to the lot? Do you have any time? And I thought, well, of course. But I had no idea what that was about. And it wasn't until I showed up to his office that I saw the prototype, and it was very rough, sitting on his desk, and he said, tell me about this. And that's how it started.
Wow. And did he have the final say?
Well, what he did is he asked me to talk about the symbolism of the award. So let me tell you about that very quickly. There's 3 different elements to this award. I think the reason folks were struggling to design something for Disney was that they were being too literal with the subject matter. They were trying to capture a film strip or a paintbrush or something that most people associate with artists. But Disney is so much more than just artists. I mean, that's obviously a beautiful and an amazing and rich legacy of the company. But as you see in the Disney program and in the Legends program, administrators and operators and actors and actresses. So the award had to have symbolism to it. And in my mind, having worked with some of these legends, before they were legends, especially Herb Ryman, there were three distinct things that all legends seem to innately have. One was an incredible imagination. It didn't matter what the medium was. You gave them the possibility to develop something from nothing, and they had an incredible imagination to come up with an idea. That's represented in the spiral, and also in the small Mickey Mouse, the Steamboat Willie that's on the film strip, because Walt used to walk around saying, let's not all forget, this started with a mouse. Mm-hmm. So that swirl represents the power of an idea, imagination. The hand is symbolic of craftsmanship. So again, whether an engineer or a licensing or a publishing individual or an actor, an actress, an animator, a sculptor, an Imagineer, each one of those people had an inherent skill that they had developed over many, many years, and they were great at it. So they would take imagination, they would take their skill, whatever that God-given skill was, and they knew how to combine it. And that's the third element of the award. It's what the world knows and sees. It's what represents magic, when those two things combine. But so those were the three elements that I wanted to try to encapsulate into this award. And fortunately, Roy liked it. After I described it to him during that fateful meeting, he said, can you come next week and tell us about it again in front of the board? And I did, and they selected it. And here we are, almost 30 years later.
30 years later,
yeah.
And it's still, you're not supposed to be able to modify the word unique. It's not very unique, it's not nearly unique, it's not extremely unique. It's unique, which is to say it's one of a kind. And that's what you created. You created a one-of-a-kind celebration of Disney and Disney imagination.
Thank you. That's my dad, by the way, in the picture, behind me with a mustache, because I was trying to look older. I seem to have hair in that picture, too. But my father was always a big force in my life. Artistically, he was a noted sculptor and a toy maker in later years. But he was insistent that when I did the award, when I created the award, to your point about lucite and acrylic, that each one, they're made out of bronze. So the bronze process is kind of an elaborate thing. But each one, the names are applied right into the sculpture. Wow. And I still craft each one of these with a foundry that's actually not too far from here. It's up in Emeryville, kind of spitting distance from Pixar. And so each one of those awards really is distinctly unique, because the nature of bronze is that it changes just a little bit every time. So each one is made for the recipient.
Well, they must, I can't imagine having one. I can't imagine not being proud and puffing up every time I look at it.
Well, thank you.
You've done something really memorable and really meaningful. Thanks so much, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, over 30 years' time, as you undoubtedly know, so many people have been given this honor from every possible facet of the Disney company, which of course is now very broad. No longer just an animation studio, no longer just a movie studio, but an entertainment empire, which is why the awards have been spread so far and wide. But I think you'll know most of the people we're bringing out tonight and know exactly why they're deserving of the awards they got. So let's begin with a woman who brought to life, both as a model, a live-action model, and as a voice, not one, but two indelible Disney characters, Wendy and Peter Pan, and Alice in Wonderland. I'm speaking of Kathryn Beaumont. I'm going to take the first seat here. So you're going to take the last seat down here.
All the way.
Yes. Well, let me escort you. I'll be gentlemanly about it. And I will escort you there.
All right.
Make yourself comfortable. All right. And we're looking at some pictures of young Kathy. Our next guest, I will not escort because he's all about automation. He is the Imagineer who, it can be said, I think he was once quoted as saying that if anything in Disneyland and the other Disney parks had wheels, he probably designed it. I know when I was a kid, far away, and I just dreamt of going to Disneyland, and the reason I wanted to go was to drive in one of those cars, in Autopia. Oh my gosh, to be 8 years old and to be able to drive a car. I mean, and then of course, I didn't get out here until I was 18 and I was already driving. Some of the thrill was lost, but not the excitement of getting to see it in person. From that to trolley cars to space-age vehicles, he's been one of the most celebrated Imagineers of all time. Please say hello to Bob Gurr. He's bouncing across the stage. Look at that. Our next guest would rate legendary status in the Disney arena if she'd only been in one particular Disney film. As it happens, she's in 3. We first saw her in The 3 Lives of Thomasina, and we later saw her in The Gnome-Mobile, an underrated Disney film, I think, that deserves more attention. And then she played Jane Banks in Mary Poppins. And that's a credential for a lifetime. She comes from a notable theatrical family in England and was discovered and brought here by Walt Disney himself. Please welcome Kathryn Dotrice. 'When I started writing about Walt Disney and Walt Disney's films, I was a teenager and I was kind of on my own. I was using my local public library for information and having some success and some frustration, little dreaming that 3,000 miles away here in California, there was a guy doing something similar but with greater scope and ambition than I ever dreamt of. He trained in library science, worked at the Library of Congress, came back to UCLA and was working on a definitive bibliography of Walt Disney. Everything ever written about Walt Disney. And this so impressed the people at the Disney studio that they not only hired him, they invented a job for him. He is, of course, the archivist emeritus who is singular in his knowledge and devotion to Disney. Please say hello to Dave Smith. 30 years ago, a comedian and entertainer answered a call for an audition. And at that audition, he did the voice of Goofy. And they liked him so much, they hired him, as I understand it, on the spot. Good call. Because well, he's not Goofy in real life with a small g. He's just a sweetheart of a fellow. And that comes through, I think, in his work as Goofy. Goofy is a sweet, sweet-natured character. And that's embodied in the man who does his voice and has for 30 years, Bill Farmer. And there's the Goofy theme song, wonderful. Now we all know about Walt Disney naming his top drawer animating directors, or directing animators rather, the 9 Old Men, which was kind of a parody on the nickname that was given to FDR's Supreme Court cabinet, 9 Old Men. when Walt named them, they weren't old, but they grew old gracefully at the studio, and fortunately, were very generous in sharing their knowledge and experience with students and up-and-comers and wannabe animators. And there was nobody more avid, more determined to become just like them than our next guest. Well, he has become just like them. He's become one of the master animators of the current generation. He wrote a great book last year, which if you don't have, you should, about the 9 Old Men, because no one is more eloquent in expressing what works so great. He animated Gaston, he animated the Beast, he animated Scar, so many immortal characters now that he has a portfolio about that size. But his ego is not that size. He's a very down-to-earth guy and a beautiful animator. Andreas Deja. When a little movie came out called Star Wars, there were people who said, you know, at one time, a film like this, a film so fanciful, so full of imagination, creating worlds and universes and environments that no one had ever dreamt of before. This is the kind of thing Walt Disney might have done in an earlier day. And so George Lucas picked up that mantle, and Lucas, of course, had many influences, but he created his own mythic characters, and none more mythic than Luke Skywalker, which leads me to our final guest, the one, the only, Mark Hamill. Welcome, one and all. It's just great to have you all here. Can we just take a moment? Look at these people. And think about what they represent. Think about what they represent to all of us and to our lifetimes. It's just amazing. Just amazing. Kathy, you voiced and also posed for 2 characters and were chosen. What it was like to feel, I don't know how to even say this without stumbling. What was it like to know that you were selected by Walt Disney? Not by a committee, not by a contest, but by Walt Disney to do that.
It was amazing. He was looking for a voice that he thought would be pleasing to both American and British audiences. And I had read for the part of Alice, and I went back to read again, and then I went back to read a 3rd time. And then he chose me to do the part of Alice, and I just couldn't believe it, that I was going to actually play this character that I had known, you know, having been born and raised in England and had read Alice in Wonderland and was very familiar with the story. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm actually going to be part of all of this. So I was very excited.
And you not only worked on those two great films, Alice and Peter Pan, but you also helped play a part in bringing Walt Disney to television. You appeared in really the first Disney TV special.
That's right. It was at the very early stages of the Christmas specials. Is that what I think you're talking about? And we filmed it in the summertime. I was a child, and then in the summertime I didn't have to do schooling, but I still had to do the work part, so it was a little easier for me because I didn't have to have the school part 3 hours and the work part 4 hours, which brought the whole day. This way I could relax in between the scenes, but it was all kind of odd, you know, to be doing this in the middle of summer with the Christmas tree decorations and lights and everything. But it was a wonderful experience, and you know, I really feel so happy that I was part of it.
And you got to work, this is, very few people can say this, you got to work on camera with Walt Disney.
Yes, I did. And you know, it was really interesting. I was so in awe of him. And I remember when we were together doing the lines, I realized that he was seeming to be a little off, and he said, you know, I just have to tell you that I'm a little nervous with this because I'm afraid I might fluff my lines or forget my lines. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is Walt Disney. He's doing this. He's actually being this way.
Well, that was his first experience
And it
doing
was his
that.
I guess it was, and of course I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time, and I was just in awe of him.
So you have nothing but happy memories of all of that.
Definitely. I just felt so fortunate because I went to the studio, and the animators and the directors of the different sequences just brought me in and made me feel part of the team and showed me what the process was going to be about. And it was such a learning experience because they showed me the storyboards, and then they told me that I would get a script that showed all the lines and all of that, then we would be recording it. And after the recordings, then there would be a live action. And the live action was for the artists to watch the movements so that they could draw the human figure in a very natural way. That was the most complicated for them to do. So here I was doing both of these roles, and the animators would bring my teacher and me during this period. Occasionally said, well, you're at recess right now. Do you want to come up and see what we're doing with the drawings? Oh, yes. Absolutely. So we would go up to the animators, and they had the drawings, which were the scene with just the character, and then they would show me, this is the first part of the movement, then the next picture here is the middle of the movement, and this at the bottom is the last of the movement, and then we send it to the in-betweeners, and they are going to draw the in-between part. So they were really showing me the process of what was going on, and I went from one department to the other, and during recess, somebody would call and say, your recess, do you want to go over to ink and paint and see what they're doing in the ink and paint department? We can let you go over there and have a look. And you know, I was watching the whole process of how an animated film was made, and I was just thrilled watching everything.
Oh, how wonderful. What a great experience for you.
Yes, it was.
Karen, you were even younger than Kathy, I think, when Walt Disney spotted you and cast you in The 3 Lives of Thomasina. Can you tell us how that process came about?
I've been doing, I come from an acting family, and so we were put out to work quite young, I think.
Because your sisters are also actresses, yeah?
Yes, they both are actresses. My older sister, Michelle, is on the West End stage right now in London, doing a musical of the Calendar Girls. I personally don't take my clothes off in public, so don't be disappointed. But yeah, I was so anyway, I was 6, and I'd been doing a play with my dad and my godfather, Charles Lawton, called the Caucasian Chalk Circle. And I guess somebody was in the audience, a casting director, and they cast me in The 3 Lives of Thomasina. I was 6 years old. And from Thomasina, I got Mary Poppins and on. I don't remember auditioning, but then when you come from an acting family, everything's auditioning. You know, if you want a hot dog, you have to kind of play Hamlet. So, I don't remember the actual process, but I must have done.
So, Thomasina was shot in England, right?
Yes.
And with Susan Hampshire and Patrick McGowan and a British cast. What was it like when you were brought here to California to do Mary Poppins? That must have been quite the adventure.
Well, actually, The sets on Mary Poppins look more like England than England. To think of it. It was a huge adventure because back in the day, it took a long time to get to Los Angeles. You went on propellered planes and you landed at about 8 destinations to refuel before you got to LA. But that was a magical experience. I was taken under Uncle Walt's wing. I think having seen Saving Mr. Banks, I realized that he was put to work when he was 8 by his parents in a newspaper company. And so it made sense to me. That's why he treated we kids in such a special manner, and I'm sure you had the same experience. He just treated us like he must have wanted to have been treated himself. And that included private planes to go to the Disney Ranch and down to Palm Springs, and that was seriously cool because the plane was called Mickey Mouse, and I guess it had big ears. Now that had been Dumbo, but anyway. So its call signal was Mickey Mouse 1, and you were allowed to sit up front. Walt and I shared the same fear of flying, and so he'd done the interior of the plane out like a sweet shop or a candy store, and so we'd play. I'd be selling. I guess I sold to the pilot and the air hostesses. I sold candy all the way down to Palm Springs, which took a while back then, but I wish I still had that entrepreneur spirit.
Mary Poppins is going to live forever, and you're such an integral part of it. Is there a moment from the shooting or moment from the finished film that has special meaning to you? That making a film is make-believe. We understand it. You come from a family of actors who all understand make-believe. But is there something about that experience that still stays with you or touches you?
Well, to be honest, I think all of it. It would be hard to find any one special spot. I was an 8-year-old kid from the countryside in England, suddenly transported to this magical arena, and everything you saw on screen, double that by 1,000,000. That's what it felt like to be in the film. I was allowed to be up on a ceiling having a tea party, sort of 80 foot above the ground, and nobody telling me off. Going up a banister on your butt kind of thing. All of it was magical. There wasn't a moment that wasn't special. And Dick Van Dyke and Julie were particularly divine to we kids. They were really loving and adorable, and Dick is a nutter, so that was great fun. He did nothing but pratfalls falling all over the place and made us laugh. Julie was a bit more proper, but I guess she had an image to uphold with the kids. So all of it was really magical. From the props department, when we did the supercalifragilistic scene, we had these toffee apples we had to wave around, and that whole sequence took about 2 weeks to make. So we're getting a little sick of toffee apples after about day 3. So the props department would say at the end of the day, Karen and Matthew, what flavor toffee apples would you like tomorrow? So that was terrific. All these little kind of kid-like memories. The only problem with that was we were losing our teeth all over the toffee apples because they were our baby teeth. And so continuity was going nuts. They were sticking in crowns all over the place as the raspberry-flavored toffee apple had impaled with our molars. Lots of memories.
Now, Mark just did a very good take, what they call old school comedy, kind of a double take, when you just casually mentioned that your godfather was Charles Lawton.
And Roy Dotrice. Related to Roy?
Roy Dotrice is...
Thank you, that's my daddy.
A wonderful actor.
What do I know?
Yeah.
I have to come to D23 to be educated.
Well, actually, come to think of it then, Mr. Lawton's wife, Elsa Lanchester, is in the cast of Mary Poppins.
Well, yeah, actually,
She's
Charlie...
the nanny gets fired.
That's right, yes. Katie
Or storms out, actually.
Yes, she does, you're right. A bit of both, but yes. Well, actually, Elsa had been having a bit of a hard time. Charlie had died by the time we did Mary Poppins, and she was depressed and lonely and everything. It was actually my mum who suggested to Walt that he get her in the movie, and he just said, "You're kidding me, is Elsa Lanchester available?" Hell yeah. Well, no, he didn't say that. been in America too long. So he hired Elsa, and you know, she was stunning in the film, and she always is.
Oh, and what a gracious gesture. That's lovely.
Very much so.
That's lovely. Now you in the Nomobile, you worked with Walter Brennan.
I did.
Playing 2 roles. Bill, part of your act was imitating Walter Brennan, wasn't it?
Well, I did a lot of, I started as a stand-up comic impressionist before I came to California. And in the old days, there were a lot of Westerns on television. And so, as a matter of fact, I used to do a Walter Brennan voice. As I get older, that gets a lot easier. No, I did. My parents didn't know what to think of me. I'd come to dinner and whoever I'd see on TV, I'd try and imitate. I'd, do George Burns. Mom, I hope we're having some gravy tonight. Smoke a cigar. Get them wagons in a circle and put the green beans in the back. My dad was like, something's wrong with that kid. So yeah, I started off as an impressionist. Yeah.
Had you ever done cartoon characters? I mean, had you ever been voluntarily done Goofy, or was it on the spur of the moment?
I practiced all when I was a kid. I loved, of course, Hanna-Barbera, and I'd go around doing, "Hey, boo-boo." I'd do Yogi Bear or exit, stage left. And of course, the Warner Brother character, that boy's about as sharp as a bowling ball. And I would just imitate these things just for fun, and my friends would, as I got older, would put me up to pranks. And we would drive through places like McDonald's, and they'd say, "Do a weird voice." And I'd do a Pat Buttram. "I'd like a Whopper with cheese, and Arnold the pig would like a Coke," and they'd look down. But I never really thought at that time that it would turn into the career that it has. And my favorite Disney character was Goofy. He just always registered with me. It's probably why I practiced the voice. And gosh, after 30 years, I guess I got the job.
And just to be clear, it's not just that Bill does the voice of Goofy for animated cartoons, for television series, for the Goofy movie and all of that. But if there are any talking toys or any other utterance that Goofy makes, he's making it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's been me for 30 years, and I think I tried to count up how many times I've done work for Disney. And Pluto. We forget Pluto, but I get paid to boss. But about 3,500 projects I think I've done thus far. So, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Walt.
But who's counting? Mark, you have invaded Bill's territory in recent years. After appearing on camera for so many years, you've become a notable voiceover actor, playing the Joker for years and years in the Batman animated show. What is it about voice work that appeals to you?
There's a certain liberation in not being seen.
Mm-hmm.
You can make choices that you might not make if the camera were pointed at you.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me of telling my kids stories when the lights were out, because at that stage, before the animation is finished, it's all created in your mind. And I had great confidence when I auditioned, because I thought it would be a public relations nightmare for Warner Brothers to hire Luke Skywalker, this icon of virtue, to play this heinous villain. They'd already gotten so much flack. Remember when they hired Michael Keaton? Before anyone even saw how wonderful he was, there was this big backlash because he was known as more of a comedic actor. So what I'm saying, it worked in my favor, because a lot of times if you want a job, your neediness can show through, or you can put yourself in a state where you're not at ease enough to deliver the nuance and detail that you'd like. With this audition, I thought, there's no way I'm going to get it. So I'm going to go in there and do the best darn Joker they've ever heard, and they're going to be really sorry they can't hire me. I was very cocky, and I was driving away thinking I did a great job. And then, of course, when they told me I had the part, I completely collapsed. I said, I can't do this. I said, I want to play a character that's never been done before, you know, like Clayface or Dr. Hugo Strange. I didn't really want to. I thought, gee, you know, Cesar Romero was so great. And my friend, of course, the actors always throw the fear of God into you. Hey, I'd never want to follow Jack Nicholson in anything. Oh no! I can't do this. But I've always aspired to be a character actor in the sense that I really appreciated actors that disappeared into the role and that you didn't recognize from role to role. You know, I mean, I love John Wayne too, but he was basically a variation on that character for most of his films. But animation really is the definition of character acting, because they can't see you and you're instantly transformed into a character actor. And that's why, I mean, aside from what I did on Broadway and off Broadway and theater, I never got to use dialects or impersonations like Bill does so brilliantly. And that's what I love so much about getting into that area. I thought, what took me so long? I love this. It's the ultimate lazy actor's job. You don't have to memorize lines. You can show up looking like hell. They don't care. You know, on camera is much more stressful, I think. And the people in animation are just the kindest. I guess it's because they're so secure in their talent. There doesn't seem to be the sort of kind of rivalry and I don't know, you know, it's a very relaxed part of show business that I've really, really come to enjoy so much.
Well, and your audience has enjoyed it too.
And you know, today they were sort of focusing on the Disney side of things, you know. I learned today that my first appearance was on General Hospital. It wasn't. You know, I've been in the business 2 years and racked up some credits, but it was my first ABC Disney show.
There you go.
There you go. But listen, you know, I have to tell you, it seems to me that first of all, I was thrilled when Star Tours became a part of Disney. Because I thought anything that I'm even remotely connected to becoming an attraction at the world's greatest theme park. I mean, I'm like you, when I was hearing your introduction, same. We're probably around the same age. It was appointment television, a Mickey Mouse Club, and the Sunday show. So when I read Star Wars the first time, I thought, this is not science fiction. I mean, there's a reason it says a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, because that's so close to once upon a time. We were scientifically completely inaccurate. I mean, you're reading this thing, and I thought, the thing that it reminds me of the most is Wizard of Oz, because the protagonist is a simple farm kid, Dorothy, of course, in the books, but Luke in these movies, that swept away on this incredible adventure. But it had humor and it had so many things that you don't associate with science fiction. And I thought, gee, if they were traveling around in horse-drawn carriages instead of in spaceships, this could be a Disney film, because it's timeless, and since you can't really place it in a specific time frame, it can be a little worrisome, though, because there was a long period after I finished the last one with Jedi. It was like in '83, and then they didn't do another one that I was involved in for, I don't know, 20 years or something. These parents that, you know, had enjoyed the films when they were kids grow up, and now they have their children, and they're pushing their kids towards me, saying, look who it is, it's Luke Skywalker. And they look up at the, 52-year-old me, and they're aghast. What happened to this guy? He really let himself go. So I thought, if I come back in Force Awakens, it's a healthy thing to see the natural aging process, and I won't be terrifying toddlers in public places anymore.
It's very thoughtful of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Another satisfied customer.
One more, right. Bob, do you remember your first conversation with Walt Disney?
Yes, it was very interesting. Everybody says, when did you meet Walt Disney? Well, you never do. You're just sort of on the lot, and everybody's working together. And we were talking about a little car chassis, and there was some people standing there, and when this guy, kind of an older, scruffy-looking guy, I thought he was the father of one of the night guards, and he walked off. Everybody said, "See you, Walt." Oh my God. That was Walt Disney? Nobody knew what he looked like in those days. But everybody that came on that lot, they were just sort of absorbed by the constant flow of ideas, and everybody's working on everything. There was no formality that I ever recalled in those early days.
And what fired your imagination? What sparked the ideas that you followed up and developed?
Well, there was a beautiful painting in the Los Angeles Times in about early September 1954, and I thought, oh, what a cool place. We didn't use cool in those days. I thought it was a small place. Boy, I hope that they build this thing. And at the same time, I had been friends of iWorks, who helped start the company with Walt. He was on my paper route as a kid. And I was
You delivered papers to iWorks?
Yes. It's wartime, we do anything, you know. But anyway, would take little black and white movies, the back lot activities. And one of those activities was this little car running around that had no body on it. And I had another car, which was kind of ugly looking, and Kirk Douglas was giving his boys a ride in it. And then I got a call a few
Because he was on the lot making 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Well, yes, he was working on that, yes, okay. But anyway, I get a call a few days later, and the guy says, do you do outside work? Well, no. But I said yes. You always say yes. Go to the Disney studio and meet a Mr. Irvine in about 20 minutes. So I walk out, and my boss looks at me, where are you going? I go out to the Disney studio, and Mr. Irvine's waiting for me at the gate. Brings me in there, and he says, we got a little car, and it needs a body. And I thought, aha, Ub's picture of that little car body, the thing I saw in the LA Times, they're related. They need a body designer. I'm a body designer. I can do that. So yes, to answer your question, the inspiration was instantaneous when I could see that park. I want to go there, but we have to build it before I can go there. Oh, and before you can run the car, you got to put a body on. Okay, I'll put a body on it. So we just get into the schmooze of working like mad all the way for the opening day.
And you never stopped after that?
Why would we stop? There was always something to do.
But that's the point. But that's exactly the point. Is that Walt was never finished, was he?
No.
Always on to the next thing.
Yeah, Walt was always, the basic flavor of Walt in the day in, day out was Walt would never issue an order in a meeting. He wasn't that kind of an executive. He'd walk up to you and say, Karen, we're thinking of doing, and then he'd articulate a kind of a rough idea of something, and you would pick up just enough to get you started thinking, but he hadn't ordered anything yet. And he'd run all over that studio lot, dropping these little seeds of thoughts. And then pretty soon somebody said, well, we have to put a budget on it. We just have to hire some people. And he would sweep everybody up just sort of like magic with no big official orders or anything. We all got used to that. So it was totally normal when a Walt would walk up to you and says, say, Bobby, we're thinking of putting in a monorail. I think you should get started on it. And he walks out. Really, that's the way
I know, it's amazing, amazing. Andreas, you didn't get to work directly with Walt Disney, but you did get to meet and spend valuable time with a lot of his closest colleagues, his great animators. And how would you say you learned from them? Did they sit down and actually teach you, or was it learning by osmosis in some way, just watching them work?
It was kind of casual. When I started at Disney in 1980, the great news was that I had a job at Disney. I mean, how about that? And the bad news were the old guys sort of didn't work there anymore. They hung around a little bit. Frank and Ollie were doing their first book upstairs, but they really weren't working on these movies anymore. So that was the bad news for me. But they were around. So I'll be darned if I wouldn't make the attempt to become friends with them and talk to them and squeeze them. And how did you do Bambi and Jungle Book? What was that like? So it was kind of casual over dinner conversations. And I had them over to my house. I spent time at their homes. So that's how that process actually went.
And what do you think the most valuable lesson you learned from them was? You're still animating. You're doing your own personal film right now called Mushka. And what do you do on a day-to-day basis that still rings in your head from what you got from these guys, these talented guys?
Well, one of the most important things that I heard one of them say was Ollie Johnston, one of the all-time great animators. He said something in a lecture that he came over to the studio once and talked to us, and he said, you have to be sincere in your work, you know, and then you think about sincere, what does that mean, you know, be more sincere, you have to press the pencil harder or whatever. But he really meant that you have to express yourself, don't put a technique onto your drawings, you know, you have to give the character emotions, they have to be real, they have to become real to you, otherwise they won't be real to an audience. And that took me a while to understand, you know, that it's not just squash and stretch and timing and all these technical things, that you're really creating a character that you have to make the audience believe is real. So that always stayed with me. And there were other things that somebody like Mark Davis would say. He would always push good drawings. You know, he said you have to have appeal in your drawing. Even if you draw a villain, there has to be some magnetism in the way you draw him, that people want to look at him or her. Frank Thomas was always about the acting, you know, that you are an actor, so think about that and act these parts out really well. So they all had their own little things going as far as that goes.
Do you think of yourself, it's a cliche, it's been said many times, about animators, but do you think of yourself as an actor with a pencil?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's all we think about, you know, trying to get into the head of the character. What is the character thinking at this moment? How is the character reacting to the other characters in the scene? So it's very much like in live action that way. You know, you really have to become the character yourself.
Well, you've done that very well. Dave, the latest beneficiary of your great work, your incredible research, is the reopening of Walt Disney's office on the studio lot. They recreated it. Tell everybody what your first actual job on the studio lot was and how it's paid off so many years later.
Well, they asked me that, they said, well, here we are preserving Walt Disney's history, but we're not going to be able to keep this office empty in this site forever. We need the space. So we need you to go in there and make an inventory of this office. And they gave me a temporary secretary, and we went in and sat in the chairs at Walt's desk, and we made lists of every single thing that was there, the books on the shelf in the correct order, and how many paper clips were in the desk drawer, and all that sort of thing. We were complete. We also got a photographer in to photograph the office from all different angles. And both of those things enabled this reproduction of Walt's office. Of course, we saved all the furniture and furnishings.
And all those books.
And all those books.
So I don't know how many of you have had the good fortune to visit Walt's office so far, but it is, you know, it's kind of a shrine. I mean, and it's deservedly so. But it's fascinating to look at those bookshelves and think, well, that's what he really had on his shelf. You know, when he was working day to day, these are the things he was looking at. There's a picture of Ed Wynn, who he was very fond of, in his inner office, sort of propped up against one of the whiteboards, you know, just interesting to see what's there, because it gives you sort of a glimpse or a peek inside an incredible mind at work.
It was really eerie for me to, as a Disney fan, have a chance to go into Walt's office. It had been pretty much closed up for a couple of years since he had passed away, and to actually sit there and think about all the great things that were accomplished in that office. And I was so delighted when I started the inventory and was able to find things that I didn't expect to find, such as in his desk drawer, the actual script for Steamboat Willie. Now, people told me that Walt was not that interested in his history, but he put the Steamboat Willie script in his desk drawer. Now, doesn't that tell you that he had some interest in history?
And there's a piece of sheet music on the piano that I know Richard Sherman is very proud of, too.
Yes. We're pretty sure that these are the pieces of sheet music that were there when Walt was there. Actually, Walt's secretaries did work in the office for about a year after he died. And they were finishing up the correspondence, getting the files in order and all that sort of thing. And so they obviously moved some things around. And so we're not sure if the things that I found when I came in 1970 were accurate to Walt's last day in the office in 1966, but we think it's pretty close.
Maybe they used a few paper clips in the interim. But it's so wonderful and so precious that you got to do that. A great experience for you personally, I'm sure. But as I say, now it's paid off for posterity, which is awfully nice. And posterity is what this panel is all about, when you stop and think about it, because somebody once said, nothing is history while you're doing it. You know, it's what you do. You're making a living, you're punching a clock, you're going to work, hopefully fruitful work, enjoyable work. But with the accumulation of time, it does become history. And that's what you've all done. You've given us these pieces of Disney history that live on, and they're indelible in our minds and our hearts, and that's why you all mean so much to us. I'm taking liberty of speaking for you guys, but am I wrong? And that's why I want to take one last opportunity to deeply and genuinely thank each and every person on this stage, because, as I say, they've given us so much. So Kathryn Beaumont, Bob Gurr, Kathryn Beaumont, Dave Smith, Bill Farmer, Andreas Deja, and Mark Hamill, thank you one and all for being here. And enjoy the rest of your life as Disney legends.